Assalamu alaikum, friends. My name is Mitila. At the time I'm talking about, I was living in Canada. This happened almost 8 years ago. It was the early days of my married life. My husband, who worked for a tech company in Canada, had brought me there. When leaving my country, I felt a sweet excitement inside, along with a habit from my past that I could never forget: teaching. I always insisted on making someone learn if they didn't want to. But I never saw this as something unpleasant. I taught children between 5 and 6 years old. Their tiny hands, sweet voices reciting poems. It was all very endearing. One day, the head teacher said, "Mitila, miss, this girl is new here. Her name is Kathrin. Please make her feel comfortable in your class." Kathrin would quietly come and stand next to me. I tried to make her feel at ease, speaking softly, telling small stories, but she would just stare into my eyes. Gradually, a strange bond developed between us. She only spoke to me and to no one else. Over time, I noticed something unusual about her eyes. They had no innocence, no sparkle, only a deep sadness or perhaps a hidden rage. Then one day, her eyes suddenly flickered again. She asked, "What are you looking at, miss?" Her voice was melodic, yet unsettling, not at all like a child's. I was startled and told her, "Go and sit down." But she didn't listen. Instead, she slowly extended her small hand toward me and placed it on my right hand. The touch sent an icy shiver through my entire body. Shocked, I stood up abruptly. The hand of this 5 or 6-year-old child felt incredibly heavy, as if it carried years of pain, grief, and hardship. It felt like a man's hand pressing down on my shoulder. I tried to push it away with both hands, but it wouldn't budge, as if made of stone. At that moment, the break bell rang, and the classroom filled with the noise of children laughing and talking. Amid the noise, that heavy hand suddenly disappeared from mine. I was waiting for class to end so I could rush home and tell my husband everything. That night, I had difficulty sleeping. Whenever I closed my eyes, I could feel the weight of that cold hand. It seemed as if she was in the next room, staring at me. The next morning, I debated whether to go to school. I was very nervous, but decided to be brave and go. When I arrived, I saw she was already there. She smiled and said, "Good morning, miss," in a perfectly normal tone, but I couldn't shake off the unease. Later that day, in the unusually quiet classroom, I had a strange feeling that there was an invisible wall surrounding me. I recited a prayer under my breath, but a silent fear seeped inside me. I turned and saw her sitting with her head down, drawing on paper. Everything seemed normal, yet my heart felt heavy. Then she began to recite a lesson I had never taught her, flawlessly. How could a little girl who had never been taught this before know it so perfectly? I shared this with a colleague, who was shocked. She told me, "Kathrin grew up here. None of us ever taught her that. You should know." She hesitated, then said, "Kathrin passed away years ago in this very school." Hearing this sent chills down my spine. I couldn't attend school for days afterward, always feeling as if someone was following me. When I finally returned, Kathrin ran toward me, hugged me tightly, and said, "Miss, where did you go?" I was frozen. At that moment, my chair suddenly slid backward as if someone had pulled it hard. The metal legs scraped loudly against the floor, and I almost fell forward. My heart pounded violently. The classroom was empty. She stood there, looking at me strangely. I turned to see if anyone was behind me. There was no one. My head started spinning, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in my own bed at home. My husband was sitting beside me, a worried expression on his face. He told me to quit the job, saying, "This is not normal." A month later, when I went back to school, a colleague told me, "You know, Kathrin hasn't been to school for the past month." I knew then, whatever she was not an ordinary child. It all began on a chilly autumn morning in Canada. The air outside was crisp, and faint mist lingered over the streets. My name is Mithila, and at the time, I was only a few months into my married life. My husband had brought me to Canada after securing a job at a tech company. Everything felt new: the weather, the people, the culture. But despite the change, one thing remained the same: my passion for teaching. Back home, I had been a dedicated teacher for years, and soon after settling here, I found a position in a local primary school. The students were between 5 and 6 years old, an age full of innocence, curiosity, and warmth. Their tiny fingers holding pencils, their shy smiles, and the way they recited poems always melted my heart. One morning, the head teacher approached me. "Mithila, miss, this little girl has..."
The next morning, my hands trembled as I got ready for school. I almost decided not to go, but something pushed me forward. When I arrived, she was already there, standing in the doorway. She smiled, an almost perfect, sweet smile, and said, "Good morning, miss." But behind that smile, her eyes told a different story. Later, during a quiet reading session, I felt an invisible heaviness around me, like a wall closing in. I began silently reciting a prayer, my lips trembling. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, head bowed, scribbling something on paper. And then she began to recite a lesson, perfectly, word for word. The strange part, I had never taught her this lesson. It wasn't even part of our class material. That evening, I told one of my colleagues about it. She stared at me, her face pale. After a pause, she said, "Mithila, Kathrin grew up here, but she died in this very school, years ago." Her words echoed in my head all night. I took a week off, but when I returned, Kathrin ran to me, her little arms wrapping tightly around my waist. She whispered, "Miss, where did you go?" Before I could respond, my chair suddenly jerked backward as if someone had pulled it hard. The metal legs scraped loudly across the floor. My heart pounded so violently that I thought I would faint. I turned quickly, no one was there, and then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in my own bed. My husband sat beside me, his eyes filled with worry. He told me firmly to quit the job. Weeks later, I learned that during my entire absence, no one else had seen Kathrin in school.